Hello and welcome to NewsClick. The devastation of the earthquake in Nepal is visible to everybody. Officially, more than 7,000 killed. Probably the figures are much higher. We are going to discuss with D. Raghunandan from the All India People Science Network what are the implications of the earthquake, what is the disaster relief that has been provided, what are the steps we can take, all of the South Asian countries who are bordering the Himalayas. Raghu, what do you think the Nepal earthquake shows? That the South Asian countries are really not ready for disaster relief, disaster management. We have seen this earlier in Kashmir, the floods on both sides of the Indian and Pakistani border. Do you think this is a repetition of the same?
Absolutely. And particularly, there are three aspects that I think we need to talk about separately. The first is disaster preparedness, which I think is the weakest and which should have been the most important. The second part is disaster response immediately in terms of relief and rescue. We are getting slightly better than that, at least in India. And therefore, what we saw in Nepal with India coming to their aid fairly quickly, we were actually able to contribute something of significance to Nepal. And the third is the post-disaster rehabilitation efforts, which again I believe is a weak link. So the only area where I think India in particular has improved somewhat has been in cyclone related preparedness, where we have had some improvement, and a little better preparedness in terms of being able to respond through rescue teams. On these two fronts, India has made some improvement, but I think the rest of South Asia has not. And I think even in India, with the exception of the cyclone preparedness, if an earthquake struck in Uttarakhand tomorrow, I think we'd be more or less in the same position as in Nepal.
Coming to Nepal, and it's really what you are saying is the fact that there was relief measures, some measures we are able to take. But the Nepal government has been criticized very strongly that they did not coordinate the relief work. Sure. And the Indian relief effort has of course come into criticism because of privileging the media and making it more of a PR show, yes, rather than really getting into disaster relief. Yes. So do you think that these criticisms are valid?
Partly yes, in the sense that India was effective in being able to provide helicopters, especially helicopters with lift capabilities, so you are able to go into areas, pull up damaged structures, which will allow ground teams to get in to rescue people. You are able to land helicopters in areas where nobody had reached, so that some preliminary assistance could be given in loading injured people into the helicopters and bringing them to the nearest hospital. To that extent, we were able to provide some rescue infrastructure and capability. But it also showed, I think, the weaknesses in our envisioning what this involves. For example, none of the helicopters which went had even first aid equipment or had medical teams on board. So you had a winch, you were able to load people into the helicopter, but if something happened to somebody on the way, you couldn't give them, administer a drip, you didn't have doctors teams or paramedics on board which could give them important response and triage inputs while transporting them to hospital. So we just use the helicopters as transporters and not as part of the medical link that you need to provide. As far as the media is concerned, I think definitely the Modi government used the disaster response as a PR effort with respect to Nepal, and particularly with reference to China, and wanted to do a one-upmanship in Nepal, saying, look, we have been able to provide more assistance than China, which is not necessarily true, but our media certainly did not highlight the role played by Chinese rescue teams, which was actually quite significant.
Instead of providing together cooperatively assistance, it became a one-upmanship game. Is that how you saw it?
Partly yes, but I think partly I would also say that the Nepal government, ultimately it's the host government which has to play the role in coordinating various rescue and relief efforts. And I'm afraid this time the Nepal government showed itself to be completely at sea on this. Various rescue teams were going in and doing things on their own. There was very little coordination role being played by the Nepalese government. Partly one could say you couldn't blame them, because after all they themselves were the most affected, Kathmandu being the worst hit. So I'm sure that the government servants, the civil service was deeply affected by the earthquake themselves and were not in a position to respond. But I think the most disappointing feature, if you ask me, is the lack of response on the part of the Nepalese military, which has otherwise been playing such a major role in Nepal. But I think over the years, with the extent of infighting within Nepal, the battle between the Maoists and the army, we have seen a decimation of capability of the Nepalese military, which I think was quite revealing during this episode.
The other argument that has been talked about is the fact that Nepal is still very centralized. It was earlier the king, so everything was really Kathmandu centric. There's no federal structures in place, and therefore also the inability of the far-flung regions to provide any kind of support, help and so on to the affected villages. Do you think this has also been a factor?
During the long years of the Maoist insurgency in Nepal, you saw a decentralized military presence of the Maoists in the countryside. But I think once that insurgency reached its peak and resulted in their entering into governance, one saw even that decentralization disappear. And that is what I was pointing to when I was saying that this was a visible lack of response. The Maoists had a greater presence in the countryside militarily. That presence was not visible at all.
Coming back to Kathmandu itself, the old Niwari areas which have really the heritage sites of Kathmandu and so on, they've all fallen down to the ground, they've been destroyed. And a part of it is also because these heritage sites really were not shored up, not looked after, and people didn't anticipate that there was a possibility of earthquake.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, I think, as I was saying in the beginning, this has been the weakest part of the disaster preparedness effort throughout the South Asian region. And if India, which is the strongest country, has shown the extent of lack of preparedness that we know that exists, why should we be surprised that Nepal was not better prepared? There has been no retrofitting of structures, whether they are residential or heritage structures. I think this is the area where our governments all over South Asia have shown to be completely ineffective, not just in implementation but even in thinking and planning in terms of preparedness. Like I said, we've had some evidence of preparedness when it comes to cyclones, in building shelters, for example, so that you can evacuate people and put them in there. We've got some early warning systems. Now you can't have early warning systems for earthquakes. You can't evacuate people because of that. So what you can do is to do preparedness in terms of shoring up buildings and infrastructure in these areas. That is what really you need to do.
Other issue that I wanted to talk about is that, there is a case, famous case, as you know, in earthquake prediction that caused some of the Italian earthquake scientists and geologists to be actually arrested and tried. Do you think that prediction of an earthquake is remotely possible with the knowledge that we have?
Not with the knowledge that we have today, but there are signs that we would be able, through projections, to be able to at least have not forecasts in terms of next month or next year, but to say that maybe in the next 3 years, within the next 3 years one can expect, because these are basically earthquake prediction techniques are based on probability forecasting, knowing that there is energy being built up, and therefore the more the time elapses before an earthquake happens, the greater becomes the probability of an earthquake occurring. That, combined with slightly more accurate monitoring of tremors and tectonic activities below, combined are likely to give you better predictive ability. Current trends seem to suggest that you may have better predictive ability maybe 25 to 30 years down the road. That's the earliest that we are.
But at the moment, our predictions are anything from 5 years to 100 years.
Absolutely.
So that doesn't really help.
Doesn't really
much.
help. Like we know in Nepal, for example, everyone was saying, this is the earthquake we were waiting for. But you were waiting for it. It could come tomorrow, it could come next year, it could come in 5 years. That's not prediction. There's nothing you can do. And therefore, this is why I say, since you know something is going to come and we are sitting on zone 4 or zone 5, you should be taking precautions now because we don't know when it's going to happen.
Last question that we don't want to sound trying to raise a scare, but the earthquake waiting to happen, there are predictions now, there are 2 more zones. There's similar energies building up. It's again the same issue, the Indian plate going under the Eurasian plate. And these zones are long zones, therefore with lots of energy. Therefore the possibility of an equally severe, in one case somebody has said even a more severe earthquake. So do you think the earthquake we're all waiting to happen could take place again?
Very difficult to say, of course. The only possible relieving factor could be that since you have had such a large earthquake now, maybe a substantial part of that pent-up energy has been released. But since there are 2 other fault lines where there is still pent-up energy, maybe that is waiting to be released as well. One can only hope that it is not too close to today, but I believe that what one needs to do, not just in Nepal, but in India, in the Himalayas, in northern India in general, that we need to be anticipating the possibility of an earthquake happening anytime, and we need to take precautionary measures in terms of building structures and building codes and some retrofitting of existing buildings as well.
Thank you very much, Raghu. We'll discuss these kind of issues and other important issues on the question of disasters, ecological issues with you as the time goes by. Thank you very much.